Hey, I'm Chase from Sorcery Contested Realm, and I'm joined by Jesse, our store advocate. And we've got a lot of exciting news from this past week. And Jesse, what's been going on?
Well, it's been a huge weekend, Chase. We had the launch of our Cornerstone events all around the world, which went exceedingly well. It was so fantastic to see players out there at Games Ahoy in Colorado, at White Rabbit Game Store in Germany, at Plenty of Games in Melbourne, where I am, and at Reaper Game Store in Denton, Texas, all coming out to enjoy Sorcery Contested Realm and get their hands on some of those sweet Cornerstone prizes.
So, for people maybe who are just finding out about sorcery and they're jumping in, they're seeing all this excitement, what are Cornerstone events?
So Cornerstone events are the foundation of our Sorcery Organized Play program. They are the store level events where players can, from the local store community, can come along, gather together, chat about sorcery, talk about the things they love about the game, trade, swap, enjoy the community, and participate in a store championship. And that store championship has some fantastic prizes. As part of our sorcery philosophy, we've talked about this on previous videos, but we want to have prizes in all of these kits at all levels of our organized play, particularly this store level, for players in the community regardless of where they place. So we've got the Dispel promo as a participation prize in non-foil, so everybody gets a copy of that. We've also got the Dispel playmats, 2 of those in the kit, which will be given out at random. No matter where you place in the tournament, you've got a chance to get your hands on those. And then, crucially, and this is one of the things that was a really kind of special moment at our event at Plenty of Games on the weekends, and that is the swap promos. So these promos are 3 in each kit, and they're to be given out to their community champions. And we had a really nice moment, I think, during the prize ceremony where I was able to talk a little bit about some of the people who have just been real stalwarts of our local community at Plenty of Games over the past couple of years. And it caused me, as someone who's kind of organized all of those events and been there as the kind of store side of that community, to really take a moment in front of everyone to call out some people who've done some really remarkable things and just been really remarkable people as part of that community. And that's something that I think we don't necessarily do enough in store communities and in gaming communities. And it was a really nice moment that I was prompted to do that by these swap promos in the kit. So well done, Eric, whose idea it was to put those in the kit. Shout out to Eric, and shout out to all the people at Plenty of Games who received those promos as well, because they well deserved them.
Yeah, right. And that's what it's all about. It's like coming together and celebrating. I think one of the cool things about sorcery, and we see this with our artists, right, is that there's so many different ways that you can express yourself, right? There's so many different art styles we see, and every game store is going to have a slightly different spin on how they run an event, right? And I think we kind of saw that even just over this past weekend. But there are some threads that unite all of them, and like you said, it's these community champions, it's the stories that get told, these moments, and so really great to have this kit being able to reinforce those behaviors and create those moments, those additional stories beyond just the sorcery gameplay stories, but the stories of connection between people and getting to call out and celebrate that. So that sounds amazing. If people are maybe on the fence about going to Cornerstones, they don't really do large gatherings or events like this typically. What advice might you give for them jumping in?
So the Cornerstones are a really fantastic opportunity for you as a store owner or organizer at a store to bring your community together. Really, the aim of it is to give a focal point for that community energy, to give something for people to build towards from a gameplay perspective and a deck building perspective. Having a goal in mind and a moment to express yourself in a gameplay and deck building sense is a really great thing. A lot of people find that fun and motivating. And also just from a community gathering perspective, I know that I saw at the Plenty of Games event on the weekend, and I could see this in the photographs and the stories that I heard from the other events around the world as well, that having that focal point of energy for just community gathering for those local communities was really important. It brought lots of people out of the woodwork who love sorcery, live in the local community, but might generally be a bit too busy to make it along to the regular locals or can't make it along every time, or perhaps they just really were looking for that excuse to become re-engaged, re-energized with sorcery. It brought all of those people together and gave them a fantastic opportunity on one day that they knew about well in advance to enjoy the game, gather together and get their hands on some cool prizes. So it's definitely, it's an opportunity that we're offering to stores. The kit is something that we're doing to give back and to support these kind of events at communities around the world. So if you are a store or an organizer who's considering getting involved and putting your hand up to run one of these, we encourage you to head along. The applications are still open for Cornerstones. We've done one round of approvals, I should say, and allocations. And anyone who's applied since the 1st of May is in the running for our second round of allocations. So if you are still interested in applying for a Cornerstone event, head along to the link, which we'll put below, and you can apply. And make sure you do so sooner rather than later, though, because they're not going to be open forever. The season does run until December, so we will be doing the second round of allocations sometime pretty soon.
Well, that's fantastic. So we had, like you said, we run from now until December, or through December. We just had our first, early stores kicking us off. Maybe you can talk a little about those stores, and then I think we have some gameplay we can look at, right?
We do indeed. So we have the finals from the Reaper gameplay event, which is really fantastic. Drew from Reaper Games ran a fantastic event there. It was sold out, had plenty of players duking it out, lots of different decks, and I think from what you can see in the photos and in this gameplay footage, some really skilled players and some high-level gameplay, but also just a really wide range of people loving and enjoying getting around Sorcery, no matter whether they won or lost. So that was exactly the vibe that we were looking for, and it was exactly the vibe that Drew's done a lot of hard work to foster, and also the team down there at Reaper Games, who have just put on some fantastic events over the last 24 months. So it was great to give them the opportunity with this kit to put on another event.
Well, one thing I love about seeing more events, I get to watch more gameplay footage, either in person or online. And people know me, I'm a pretty casual player, but I love to see new decks and learn new skills from people playing the game. So it sounds like we have some gameplay footage. And Jesse, can you maybe commentate and walk us through? And I'll step back here and see what I can pick up and learn to get some new skills to add to my toolbox here.
Sounds good, Chase. Let's dive in. All right, so we've got Trevor here on the top of the screen playing Druid, and we've got James on the bottom of the screen playing Avatar of Air. So two of the very powerful avatars in the game and the metagame at the moment, making their way to the final of the Reaper Game Store event. Avatar of Air representing one of the strongest aggressive archetypes. So if you're a card game metagame aficionado, this is sort of your archetypal aggro deck. And then for Trevor on the top, we've got Druid, which has a lot of flexibility. So can play a pretty aggressive game style, can play a more mid-range game style, which is probably what it's most suited to, or can play control if you really want to lean into particularly some of the defensive sites and the water style of control. So what we're seeing here is a tourney off a Kelp Cavern. So Kelp Cavern for Druid, allowing the player to select cards from the bottom of the spellbook and put one on top. And then Tawny, of course, part of Druid's ability, getting a free 1/1 airborne spellcaster every time the Druid plays a site until it flips. We had a Tower Palabry Bats, which is a pretty aggressive start for James. And then James uses Avatar of Air's ability to throw the Palabry Bats or fly the Palabry Bats from the tower to the Perilous Bridge, and then they take out the Tawny. So the Druid, of course, is going to be able to resummon that Tawny, and then we had a Tooth Fairies coming down too on the Perilous Bridge. So one of the features of the Avatar of Air deck is you see a lot of airborne minions, and that is helpful for the Avatar of Air in combating Tawny, because one of Tawny's abilities, of course, in airborne, not just a movement benefit, but also something that prevents Tawny from being attacked by opposing minions, which does tend to keep Tawnies alive longer than you might expect for a 1/1 minion. In this case, though, Tooth Fairies and Palabry Bats both having airborne allows them to pretty easily interact with Tawny. Although in that instance, by attacking the Tawny with the Tooth Fairies, there was actually effectively a block from Tawny, which is not something that Trevor would be too upset about. Tawny, of course, has the can't defend ability, so if the Tooth Fairies had just attacked the site, then Tawny wouldn't have been able to defend, and Trevor would have taken 2 more damage there, but Trevor would have had that Tawny still alive. Instead, we see the floodplain come down and Tawny be summoned again, which, I guess from James's perspective, that Tawny now has summoning sickness, but perhaps the extra 2 damage from the Tooth Fairies would have been interesting to weigh up there. So we've got a Sling Pixies as well, came down for the Avatar of Air, and now Red Cap Parries comes in and attacks. Interesting to note, because the floodplain was played next to the Perilous Bridge, the parries is able to be played onto the floodplain and then attack onto the bridge because it's not crossing the top border. Lightning Bolt comes down from James to take out the parries. Sling Pixies gets moved with the Avatar of Air, or flown across from the beacon to the Perilous Bridge, and then shoots down Tawny. Then we have the 4 damage coming in from the Tooth Fairies and the Palibri Bats. So the Avatar of Air, now with 3 minions on the board to 0 for the Druid, is starting to establish some board position. And you could see from that first turn when the Palibri Bats attacked the Tawny, James has been very keen to keep Tawny off the board, which has been interesting because both that attack from the Palibri Bats and that attack from the Tooth Fairies into Tawny could have been attacks on the site that couldn't have been defended because Tawny can't defend, but James really electing to keep Trevor off the board completely and just really establish the strong board position. So a Desert took out the Sling Pixies, Ascalon Phoenix came down on Trevor's side, and then we're seeing a Browse from James. Ascalon Phoenix also airborne, meaning it's something that can attack for Trevor, attack into James's small airborne minions and take them out. So it is something that James is going to want to deal with if he can. And Browse, of course, the perfect card for finding answers, digging 7 deep in the spellbook and finding a Lookout. So the Lookout is going to allow James to see what's coming up from Trevor. And we've got a Drums of Doom, a Redcap Parries, and a Minor Explosion. So we see a Rolling Boulder from the Tooth Fairies, which is going to deal 4 damage to the Ascalon Phoenix. And then the Avatar of Air moves itself up onto the Lookout using its fly ability. And presumably next turn is going to try and bounce itself forward again onto that desert where the Rolling Boulder is sitting. So one of the really powerful things that Avatar of Air can do is this move itself untapped onto a Rolling Boulder, because one of the disadvantages, of course, of Rolling Boulder is that you push it away and it goes onto the other side of the board. But the other one is that it's really hard to maneuver onto the site where it is and tap to use it. But here in this case, perhaps something that Trevor wasn't realizing is that even if you're the unit holding the Rolling Boulder, so the Red Cap Parries there that was played onto the boulder, attacked forward onto the Avatar of Air site holding it, any site on the any unit on the site where the boulder is can actually tap to push it, even if they're not carrying it. So the Avatar of Air was able to use the boulder that the parries were carrying and push that back over the parries because it was the unit that was tapping. So the Avatar of Air making double use of the boulder and now itself bouncing up and then moving back, carrying the boulder. Quarrelsome Kobolds comes down. Moving back with a blink, I should say, the Avatar of Air. Quarrelsome Kobolds comes down, and presumably that's going to be the end of those Tooth Fairies. And then we're seeing a flip from the Druid. So this is always a big moment in a Druid match. Trevor down to 8 life here, managing to take out the Tooth Fairies and to get Bruin summoned to negate the Palibri Bats a little bit here and also give the Druid a bit more protection. But what that means is no more Tawny. So the Bats is going to trade with the Kobolds. We're going to see Hearst Eagle moving up here. And then we've got the Rolling Boulder to take out Bruin. So squish for the Big Bear. Sad times for Bruin. Bruin does soak up all the damage. But we've got a 3-3 Hearst Eagle and now a 2-2 Palibri Bats, which has been bounced over onto Trevor's side of the field, and a Devil's Egg on the Hearst Eagle. So Trevor is going to have to deal with multiple threats here. He does have the Boulder, but without the Avatar of Air's ability to bounce itself untapped, it's going to be really difficult for Trevor to actually make use of that Rolling Boulder. So Drums of Doom comes down, which is going to use up all of Trevor's mana. And that's going to stop the Hearst Eagle from moving in onto Trevor, but the Devil's Egg is already on Trevor's site. So that's Trevor down to Death's Door. The Devil's Egg has done its job in taking away that last couple of life points. And now all that Avatar of Air here has to do, all that James has got to do is find a way to deal some direct damage to Trevor. Now, the Drums of Doom, of course, with the Druid flipped, does make it really hard for minions to be the ones to deal the death blow. But with an air deck here for James, another Rolling Boulder, any direct damage is going to help. So we're seeing now a Plague of Frogs come down using the threshold from the floodplain and the Kelp Cavern. So you can, because the Kelp Cavern and the floodplain are both a bit obscured, it looks like Trevor's playing mono fire here. But actually, with the floodplain flooding another one of his sites and then the Kelp Cavern underneath his druid, he's able to get the threshold from Plague of Frogs. But unfortunately, James has the Rolling Boulder. So it was specifically Rolling Boulder, really, that James needed there to finish that game, because Trevor had the Plague of Frogs come down, which meant that there were a lot of annoying frogs getting in the way of things like Lightning Bolt. And also, as we noted, it was hard with the Drums of Doom for James to get minions close enough to deal the death blow through the Druid's Thorns. But of course, Rolling Boulder ignores all of that and just comes careening across the battlefield, and unfortunately for Trevor, crushes the poor Druid. So a really quick, really swift, and interesting game there, showcasing the power of the aggressive pressure that Avatar of Air can put on, the maneuverability of being able to utilize that Rolling Boulder not just once the first time it was pushed, but then actually get up and back and reposition itself, holding the Rolling Boulder to get it into position again to crush the Bruin, and then have another Rolling Boulder come down to finish off the Druid. So it was just relentless pressure from James, not letting Trevor off the hook, not letting Trevor stabilize and set up that Thorns-related Drums of Doom powered defensive net that Trevor was trying to get in place to deal with these aggressive minions. James just had too many of them too quickly, and Trevor wasn't able to stabilize. A fascinating game of an aggro deck against a mid-range deck. Hope you enjoyed. And for all of you that are heading down to your Cornerstone events over the next couple of weeks, hope that you enjoy some fantastic games of Sorcery, have a chance to catch up with new and old friends, and enjoy the Sorcery community. Enjoy the rest of Cornerstone season, and we'll see you all again soon.